Are you ready to discover who's truly in your corner today? In the ring, every boxer faces punches alone, but behind every jab, every hook thrown, stands an entire community that fuels strength, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of victory. Boxing isn't just about fists and footwork, it's about the unbreakable bonds that are forged in the gym, they're forged in sweat, blood, and shared struggle. Just as a boxer relies on their corner for strategy, strength, and support, our lives and our careers demand a community in our corner. In this episode, we're going to step into the ring with a champion who knows firsthand that no victory is ever achieved alone. We'll explore why the most important fights are won not by the power of punches, but by the power of connection, belonging, and the purposeful power of community. Because when a community supports a fighter or any dreamer, the impossible becomes inevitable. Hey, my friends, welcome back to the UNCOMMODiFiED podcast. I'm Tim Windsor, and today my guest on the show is Mandy Bujold. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, for those of you who don't already know who Mandy is, let me give you a quick introduction. So Mandy is an 11-time Canadian national boxing champion, 2-time Olympian, 3-time continental champion, 2-time Pan American Games gold medalist, that's a mouthful to say, public speaker, advocate for women in sport and industry, and a kick-ass and teach others to punch you in the face community builder, which we'll get into for a second. That's kind of interesting. But of course, this is an uncorked conversation. It's like morning time on a Monday, so probably not time for a scotch for me. Maybe not you either, Mandy. So what are we drinking together? Here, I got a coffee. How about you?
I've got a coffee too.
Okay, and full disclosure to all my listeners, my coffee's almost gone and so is Mandy's because I had trouble connecting to my own system today. So here's the last swig of coffee in mine.
There you go.
No ground, so I'm good to go. All right, so Mandy, let's kick this off with a question to get this conversation started. So I want to know why for you, why is the power and potential of community so vital to you in your history, your career, and in your current roles? And how do we create this kind of community that ultimately empowers people to do great things for themselves and others?
Honestly, I think it's a bit of a domino effect, right? Like, I think, I grew up in a family that was very giving. My mom was always looking for, if she would hear about someone needing help or someone needing support, she'd be the first one to step up to try to support. So I kind of saw that throughout my career. And then in my own experiences too, when I started boxing, realizing that, it's an underfunded sport, like most sports in Canada, you had to kind of go out to the community. You had to go out to try to find support. And it started off with simple things like doing a car wash or selling t-shirts or whatever it might be, to then doing kind of bigger fundraising events. But it was always the people in the community, the small business owners, the people that were like, hey, I believe in your dream, I believe in you, and I want to support you. And that was something that I never took lightly. It was something that I was like, wow, this person is getting behind me. They hear about my dream and they want to make it happen. And that always resonated with me. And that was always something that, I always tried to see, how can I take that feeling and give it to other people? So I think the more that you're willing to help people and support people, again, if people have that feeling, they're going to want to do it for others as well. So how do we just create that? And to me, that's community. That's about as simple as it gets, is how do you help people and then turn around and flip it back.
Yeah, and you know what, and I love it, and it's kind of interesting because, community is why we're connecting. So I have a good friend in this community, Jeff McIntyre, who's been on my show before, and Jeff and I have done some things together. Jeff, obviously, your and Jeff's journey have crossed over the years, and now you have some connection with Jeff on a regular basis within the Grand Valley Construction Association. And he is a community builder, networker extraordinaire. It's like his special superpower. And so when he connected us, I was really fascinated because, again, for me, the interesting thing, and even I tucked into it in that intro, is that, boxing is this individual sport that we all see. And when people get in the ring, and by the way, I love watching boxing. I've been a UFC fan before UFC was UFC. So I actually love the art and craft of combat sports, and the strategy and all that. But again, in the moment, what we see in all its glory is this individualized activity, and yet there is all of this stuff that's happening in between, which I think is really an interesting interplay when you think about it. You're funded by community, yet you go in and you do a sport that is highly individualized. So I'm interested to know, what has this journey taught you about yourself? What has it taught you about some of the people that you've been in community with in relationship to building the dream that you have?
I mean, I don't know how long do we have to talk about all of the things that I've learned about myself. Um, yeah, I would say like honestly, like when I first started boxing, it was really just, hey, this kind of feels cool. Like it feels different. I love the environment. I loved all of those pieces. I loved learning how to throw punches. It just kind of felt pretty badass, to be honest. And then from there, it was just kind of, then it started to like grow into other things. And then it was like, okay, how do I get to that next level? How do I get to that next level? And that always became part of like, how do you build the team around you?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get that support system that's going to kind of help you get to that? And that's the same as anything else in life, right? Whether you want to move up in your job or whatever it might be, you need those people, you need those champions to like get behind you to support you along that journey. So obviously I learned a lot that way as well in terms of like who are those people that really truly have your back when it matters most. And I think you would often see that when there's a loss, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
let's say you get in the ring, you big moment, and you lose. Who are those people that when it gets quiet and the rest of everybody else who maybe is watching for that small period of time kind of fade away? Who are those people that are still there, right? Those are the people in your corner. So to me, it was always very important to kind of pay attention to who are those people, what are they saying in those moments, and then how are you kind of like getting yourself back into the game and back kind of into the ring or whatever, right? So I think it's always, yeah, who do you surround yourself with? Who's there in those kind of like dark moments to help lift you up is always very important. And then how do you kind of take those moments and kind of become a better version of yourself, right? Like it was always to me like a self-growth. Didn't matter who my opponent was in front of me. It was always like, how far can I push myself? What can I do? Like I would try to learn techniques or learn different strategies. And I was like, can you implement it under pressure in that situation, right? So it's like, and again, not knowing in boxing, you don't know what your opponent's going to throw. How do you react to it? You got to be like split second reaction. So a lot of it was, yeah, like that's the part that I loved about boxing was that how do you implement those things in those high pressure situations? Just being able to kind of like every day just get a little bit better and just analyze and come back and like, okay, try something different. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, I just love that process.
Yeah, and there's so many analogies we could probably draw from all sports. Boxing, I think, is an interesting sport. Again, I've never done it. Although I will confess that my mother raised four boys on her own, and we were a rather ragtag bunch. And this was back a long time ago. Probably not the best parenting idea now, but my mother came up with this idea that since we like to fight, we should probably learn to fight and use boxing gloves. And so my mom bought boxing gloves, and when we fought. If we fought, we had to put them on and we had to fight with the boxing gloves on. Now, I was 7, 9, and 11 years younger than my brothers.
Okay.
And so I will tell you that by the time I was about 9 years old, I had been knocked out unconscious several times in our backyard. Now, again, not a great parenting idea, but this is the way, this is the way we did it in our family.
Yeah.
So I learned a few things that day, and one was that running away was a great strategy for me at times. So not a great boxing strategy for most boxers, but
Yeah.
that's my claim to fame with boxing. That's it. My brothers knocked me out several times.
Right. I think it's interesting actually. So like again, that's how my interest in boxing started. My parents, I had two older brothers who were fighting all the time. And my parents one day, literally they went out and bought boxing gloves and a bag though. They didn't go as far as like,
Well, there you go.
they bought a bag and they're like, okay, why don't we just see if they'll like actually take their aggression out on that bag instead of each other? But it didn't work. Like you said, I remember many times like they would just like put the gloves on. Even like for me, they'd throw the gloves on me and it'd be like they'd find some other girl in the neighborhood and be like trying to get us to fight each other.
It's like not a great strategy. Again, if you're listening in, we are not endorsing
No.
children boxing, but this is the sort of the weird journey we have. You know what I loved earlier, Mandy, what you said? Real true community maybe finds us, or we know we have it, actually when we lose, when we fail, not when we're just winning.
Yeah.
It does really cleanse the group of people around us, right? When things aren't, when the limelight's off of us, when we're not in the winner's circle, when we haven't raised our hands in the ring, who is there still cheering us on? That's a really interesting idea. And again, if you're listening in, I would just challenge you, number one, who is that for you? Who's always in your corner, whether you're winning or losing? And who are you in their corner for when they're not just winning in your life, whether it's family, friends, and your community. I think that's a really wonderful litmus test of what true community really looks like. Because, man, it's easy to be in community or want to be around people when they're winning, when they're the star. There's a lot of things that go on there. So that's a really great observation about what it means to be true community, even when we don't leave the ring being the winner.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is. It's one of those things that has always kind of like stood out for me, right? Like, how do you find the right people to sometimes it's just getting a different perspective too, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the right things to say, but it's like just knowing that that person's there, and it's like reaching out to say, hey, if you ever want to chat, you want to go for a coffee, you want to go for a walk, whatever it might be, right? Like, we all need those people.
We sure do. And your battles and your fights have gone well beyond the ring in your life. Obviously, you've had some battles with, I believe, with sports associations in relationship to women and to sport and to motherhood and a lot of different things. So you're scrappy. You're a scrapper by nature, Mandy, I believe.
I didn't know I had it in me. That's the funny part. People are always kind of asking, like, how do you, well, yeah, like, how do you have that like desire to just fight? And it's not something that you just like, as you grow up, you think, oh, I'm just that person. I think you kind of realize it when you need to, right? Like, you don't really realize you have that fight in you until it's like, all right, it's fight or flight. And what are you going to pick? And for me, it's, again, that case against the IOC was something that started off with it just didn't feel right. I just like remember hearing this, I'm doing all this work preparing for an Olympics, and then all of a sudden it's like this 9-month period. Okay, actually, no, you can't qualify. And the only reason I couldn't qualify is because I was off for my pregnancy and postpartum period. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. I've been ranked in the top 5 my entire life. Now you're telling me like I didn't box, is acting like I didn't box a day in my life. So it kind of sometimes starts off as just like gotta trust your gut. And it's like, I started having conversations and just asking questions and being like, okay, so how do we just like bring this forward to make sure that they actually considered it, even like, just, have you thought about what this rule or what this means? And then obviously it kind of like spiraled into a pretty big international case. Was not expecting it to be. It was really just me trying to voice my opinions and my thoughts, and then here we are.
Well, and it's, again, it's an interesting thing because I recorded a podcast maybe a month or a month and a half ago with somebody, and the title of that was something like Problems Worth Fixing. And this maybe is more about problems worth fighting for. And maybe, again, it's just what seems awkward, what doesn't seem right, what in our society, what in our workplaces, what in our families just doesn't seem right and is worth contending for.
Right.
It's worth the pushback. It's worth potentially even getting a little bit of a fight about it in relationship to what's important. And I mean, this tips into the idea of justice. And I love that part of your story. And as I've done, I did some preparation for our conversation, and I have to admit, I've followed your career on the side for a long time. And then, of course, when I knew I was going to get a chance to talk to you, I did a bit more research, and just, it's very interesting for me. And now where you're at, because now you're post a season of your life or part of your career, you're in this other now piece. So I'm interested to know, as an athlete who's performed at these extremely high international levels, and now you come back and you sort of settle into what life is going to look like for you in the next part of your journey. What's that been like for you? And how does it bring you to the place that you are now in relationship to your career and community?
Yeah, I would say it's honestly, at the very beginning, it's very scary. Like, your entire identity is wrapped up in the sport, or in kind of those pieces of what you're doing, and this goal and this constant 4-year cycle of this is where you want to be. And then when you kind of know it's coming to an end, I guess throughout my career also, I would say that, like, I always felt like I was preparing for what was next, and not a lot of athletes do that, which I can only imagine it gets even scarier if you don't do that. But I would take up any opportunity. Whether it was a networking opportunity, whether it was an opportunity to do a course, or an opportunity to kind of learn something, to think about my life beyond the sport. So I guess, again, I get to that point where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I know I'm going to have another child. but what's next? And I feel like everyone around me kept just being like, you've got so many opportunities, you've got so many things you could be doing. And I honestly felt like that throughout my career because I'm a busy person, and I always felt like, oh, I wish I had time to do that, I wish I had time to do that. But when you were like sitting there quietly and it's all done and you have all this time on your hands, you're like, what were those things that I wanted to do? Like, they kind of just fade away. So I definitely had a moment like that. And I remember, going for a walk with my sports psychologist, and we were just kind of like talking through it. And she's like, enjoy this quiet right now. Because trust me, once the ball starts rolling, you're going to wish you had that quiet moment. And at the time, I'm just kind of like, yeah, sure. You're not really like absorbing it. But now I understand what she meant, right? Because it's like, I started having conversations with Jeff, like you said. We started talking about, okay, I saw him. He tried out for my Champions for Charity event, and I knew he was connected in the community. We had seen each other in many community events. I didn't know what he did. I just knew he knew people. So I asked him, I'm like, we need to go for a coffee. And he was like, why? What's up? And I was like, I don't know. I need a job. I need to think about like what I'm going to do next. Because I didn't have like a very specific kind of plan. I knew some of the pieces that I wanted. I wanted to obviously have the community involved. I love doing like public speaking and that kind of thing. Like there was pieces, project management, that I knew that I would like, but I didn't know exactly what that role would be. And then right away, he was just kind of like, you're hired. And I'm like, okay, but where do you work? I don't even know. What do you mean? Like, where am I hired? Anyway, it was like literally that simple. And then we started kind of walking through like what that could look like. And then I started to be like, okay, this is actually really interesting. And I think one of the things for me that was interesting is that my family comes from a construction background. My dad worked construction. My brothers were encouraged to go into construction. My uncles are in construction. It was never once presented to me as something I should consider, whether on the tools or not. And now that I've kind of come into this world and I'm seeing like a whole different angle of it, and it's like I think back to some of those things, like my dad would come home after a day and he'd talk about something that happened on site, and now all of these things are kind of coming back. So I understand the culture. I understand kind of like what's happening out there. So it's been really, really interesting, and it's kind of felt like this perfect fit, like something that I couldn't have come up with myself, right? Like just the natural fit between, boxing being in a male-dominated industry to now construction, which, women make up, 5 to 6% of the industry. So how are we moving that forward? How are we changing that? How are we having some of those conversations? Anyway, so I love all of the pieces that are kind of coming together, but it was never something that was planned. It was like having conversation with someone like Jeff at the right time, and then trying to develop it and then use those skills that I learned throughout my career. I think that was always the biggest thing, is I felt like I learned so much. There were so many things, and I was just going to like leave it. I guess I didn't really understand initially how I was going to apply those lessons in the ring into my work life, and now I'm able to do that just on a daily basis.
Yeah, which is an awesome journey, and you know what it is. Is that untraditional sort of career path, or a path that is sort of this thread in your journey, which is quite fascinating. And it is unfortunate when you think about whether it's construction. I mean, years ago, actually, my original business was a construction business. My brother and I had a small construction business together, and so I have a little bit of understanding of the construction industry. But again, very atypical to see females in the business back then, for sure. Yeah. But even now, it's a sad reality when you think about it. Because, I mean, there's lots of different jobs, and we have this idea maybe again about, we perceive certain things regarding gender and what jobs fit and what jobs don't, or physical strength or not. And clearly, I mean, I have to admit it. I mean, you would kick my ass if we got in the ring. So I wouldn't be able to say, well, because I'm a man, I should dominate that, because that ain't going to happen. Right. So again, it's this non-traditional path, and I love it because I do think that in this industry, particularly with construction, we have to, in lots of industries, we've got to awaken ourselves up. I do a lot of consulting in the plumbing, sort of the plumbing water well space, and have for many years in my business. And, I will say I coach North American sales teams, and one team that I've been working with for years, they just got their first female territory sales manager. Oh. And I'm thinking to myself, man, oh man, what is wrong with us? Yeah. Like what is wrong with our psyche still, that we have this idea, well, that's a male industry, and well, that's a female industry. Right. I mean, those are not helpful stereotypes.
No, and I think more and more people are kind of challenging that, and I think as teams are starting to bring women on and they're realizing, oh wow, this helps with like so many other pieces, right?
Yes.
Like it's not just about having a female on your team, right? It's like what can they bring, different perspectives, and just the camaraderie within the team, kind of the dynamic changes a little bit, right? So how do
Yes.
you kind of move that towards a positive and a more welcoming environment for everybody?
Yeah, no, and I love that. And again, if you're listening in, if you're in this local community, you ought to be checking out what Grand Valley Construction Association is doing on these fronts. If you're not in this community, if you're in the U.S. or in another one of the 20 or 23 countries that you're going to listen in, you ought to be asking yourself, what does it look like to be someone who figures out how to do this better in each of these communities? Because it's important. Because again, we have to relearn things and we have to understand what it is to move forward as a culture and society, and I'm really glad that you're involved in that. Now, Mandy, I want to take the conversation in a totally different direction for a
All
second.
right.
So you apparently, this is what I understand, okay? And Jeff's a good example. So you teach people to punch each other in the face for charity.
Yes.
Come on. Now, I mean, I've gone in a dunk tank, okay? I've been in a dunk tank for charity. That's not bad because the ball doesn't hit me in the face, okay? That's
Yeah.
not so bad. But you apparently, somehow, you convince people like Jeff and like others in our community to learn how to punch each other in the face for charity.
Yeah.
Help me understand how this happens, and why would somebody want to do that?
You'd be surprised, honestly.
You'd be surprised.
The event just finished a week ago. We've already got about 25 people signed up for next year.
Wow.
People are just like lining up to do this. Part of it is one, it's stepping outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly like you say. Every single person, and I tell this all the time, it's like, if you're not afraid to get punched in the face, you're not normal. Like, I had 190 fights, and I was afraid every single time I got in there, right? It was like, there's always that, like, unsure what could happen. It's a sport. But at the end of the day, it's really about, like, learning the techniques. And it's trying to kind of change that stereotype that people think about boxing as just two people getting in there and trying to hurt each other. It's really strategic, and it's really about, like, the first thing they learn is how to defend themselves, how to take the power out of those punches that are coming at them. Like the footwork, like if you don't have good footwork, you're never going to punch anybody. So I love taking people outside of their comfort zone. So business professionals, we get them to go through a 15-week training process. They learn as much as we can in that 15 weeks. Throughout that process, they're raising funds for charity. And in the end of it, they actually get into the ring in a real sanctioned boxing match. It's not choreographed at all. It's a real boxing match. And then kind of do something that 99.9% of people would never do. So for some people, honestly, it's a bucket list item. Our charity is McMaster Children's Hospital. They do incredible work in the community. A lot of people step in there because they have a personal why. They've been impacted by this hospital. They've had to use it with their children or someone that they know. And there's some pretty amazing stories that come out from some of the people that come and actually step into the ring. So it's always nice to hear that connection piece, and they're fighting for something bigger than themselves. And it's pretty amazing. It's inspiring, and it's inspired the community because people are excited about it. We raised $700,000 last week at this event, and it just shows that people are excited. They want to either step into the ring or be there to witness it. And it's been really fun to kind of watch the journey.
That's amazing. So when you started this journey, did you ever think, you know what, I'm going to convince a bunch of people, teach them a box, get in a ring. They're going to raise money, and we're going to raise almost $750,000 in one night. Did it ever dawn on you, or are you this kind of person who like sets these massive goals and like, well, I'm still not there yet. I've got a bigger goal, Tim.
Yeah, my goal's $1 million. So yeah, I am that person. Yeah. But in my mind, it was like, we got to start. At first, I had to sell the idea, just like you're saying. I had to go to specific people in the community and be like, you should do this, and here's why. And now I don't have to do that anymore. People are coming to us and coming and just asking questions and are super interested in it. My goal was to be $1 million a year in year 5. So we're at 700 in year 3. So
Wow.
I think we're on track for it. And yeah, partly because I've been involved in events like this in Toronto. So I know the type of numbers that can come from these types of events. And I will also say that people love this event because it's so different. Usually you go to an event, you sit down for dinner, or you hear a speaker, it's a typical
Yeah.
event. Whereas this, it's like, imagine like you're watching your boss step in there and fight it out. Like it's so different. And then it's black tie, it's Vegas style. It's like, it's giving people an experience. And I love creating experiences.
It's amazing. I imagine, I know some people who would pay a lot of money to punch their boss in the face.
Right?
Serious? This,
Exactly.
you know what I think, I think I could get on board with this fundraising thing. That would be, think about that. You can punch your boss in the face and you raise money to do it.
Right?
Many people's dream. This is like their dream
Right?
to
There you
punch their
go.
boss right in the face.
We're making dreams come true.
Oh yeah, making dreams come true since 2020. I love it.
Yeah.
Mandy, what a great conversation. And I mean, you're just such an inspiring person, obviously, just love what you do. And I go back to where we started, where it's just this strange thing where you're in this sport, which we all see as highly individualistic. At the end of the day, most of us don't know the names of the coaches and trainers of some of the most famous people within the sport. We know their names, we understand them. Whether it's UFC or whether it's other disciplines of combat sport, boxing, we don't know the names of the coaches, unfortunately. Maybe some people do if they really follow, but we
Yeah.
tend not to know them. We know the name of the person who gets in the ring, that individualized sort of part of the sport.
Yeah.
But what you're reminding us all today is there is a community, a massive community behind people, just like there is in our lives. And
Yeah.
again, celebrating the people who've invested in us and how we build this community. To me, that's a really awesome part of this conversation. Because I think sometimes in life, we probably all get locked into thinking it's an individual sport we're playing, I remember one time I was I had a conversation with a business leader that I had met and sort of doing consulting for their company, actually a U.S. company. And it was interesting because I learned about this person later on. They'd been the president for a long, long time. And they, as a company, they had gotten a lot of patents. So they had many patents. And I was in my initial conversation when I started consulting with this company, and I asked this question, which I realized after was the wrong question to ask. I was in this group meeting with this president who'd been president for 50 years, and I said, hey, help me understand, when you get a patent, tell me how the team works together to do that. And his answer was very interesting. He said, well, let me just correct something. And I said, what's that? He goes, getting a patent is not a team sport. And as soon as he said that, I thought, oh, I think I know the number one problem in this business that needs to be
Right.
fixed. So again, he had this idea that success in this business was all about him as an individual, which I think at the end of the day just is impossible. It's groups of people who come together, whether it's in a business or like your association like you or in a community. And we live in a highly individualized society. We venerate individualism. But yet, and independence, and maybe this conversation ought to remind all of us that it is actually intradependence, this connectivity that we need with each other in our world and our community, that we need to be more focused on. And so I'm interested as you sort of look into the future, and you look at, I know you have a young daughter, I think. Do you have two children? You have one?
Two, yeah, two girls.
Two girls. So what is the kind of community you want to see your girls grow up in? What do you want for them, and what should we want for ourselves in this journey?
Yeah, I think like again, it's funny when I first, got pregnant, and I just assumed I was having a boy, and it was kind of interesting actually. I don't know why this moment really stands out for me, but there's so many boys in my family. My husband as well has so many boys in his family. It was just like, we're having a boy. That's just what's going to happen. And the moment I had my ultrasound and found out I was having a girl, like this weird feeling came over me. Like it just hit me. Like it was really hard to understand. Like, I'm having a girl? What? And all of a sudden it just felt like this immense pressure of like, wow, like those little eyes are going to be watching me, right? Like when it's a boy, it's like they're watching. You just kind of assume they're going to watch your husband. And I think that was something that like kind of stuck with me. It's like, what do I want to not just say? It's like, how are you actually modeling that behavior? That was always very important. And it's funny because even before I had kids, that was always something that I was very cautious about throughout my career. When people would ask me to do certain things or whatever, it always had to be like, is that the reflection I want people to have of me? I always had to like my brand and everything was very, very important. And I didn't do certain things because of it, even if it was financial or whatever. Like it was very, very important. So I think the more that we kind of recognize what is that person that we want our children to grow up to be like, I think that's kind of, I try to model that. And the more that you do that, again, it's going to trickle down, kind of starting, where we started off. It's like, how did I become that person that wanted to build community and give back to communities? Because I saw that and I felt that from other people. So if I can teach my kids to be that person as well, then hopefully, again, the people that they surround themselves with will feel that and will also kind of be those people.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. So if people wanted to get connected with you somehow, and maybe they're in the local community and they want to get punched in the face for money, how would they find you and the cause and everything that you're about?
Yeah, I mean, social media is probably the easiest way to find anyone. It's usually just my name, Mandy Bujold. If they're interested in the boxing piece of it, Champs for Charity is the website. People can, whether they want to actually step into the ring, you can do that as a champion, or you can volunteer at the event. There's lots of different ways. There's a lot of people getting involved in kind of creative ways as well. So those are probably the best methods.
Okay, awesome. So last question for you. This podcast is called UNCOMMODiFiED. For me, it's all about standing out and standing up in unique ways for the benefit of others, bringing the uniqueness of who we are or who you are to that moment. So here's a question. When you walk in a room of people and you're bringing the Mandy, you're bringing the thing that that Mandy has as a unique contribution to the people around her at that moment. What's Mandy doing that is like, this is my unique contribution that I can bring to any room?
Ooh, I think I'm always just trying to make connections, right? I'm always trying to connect different people that I think should work together, just like Jeff. I think that's why we connect so well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's all about like hearing things and making different connections so that people can kind of come together.
That's great. And again, so maybe you've got that unique superpower like Mandy too, of creating connections for the benefit of others, creating community, and also understanding that we have individualized responsibilities within community. At the end of the day, in boxing, your coach and trainer don't get in the ring with you. You have an individualized responsibility, and yet it is aided and empowered by a community of people who come alongside you, and you come alongside them in these journeys. Mandy, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for having it. And again, if you've listened in today, listeners, you listened in for a reason. And do me a favor, DM me or send me an email at tim@uncommodified.com and let Mandy and I know what you're doing with this conversation and how you're using it for the positive benefit of yourself and others. Thank you for your time today. Thanks, Mandy. Cheers.